The Right Thing, Lukanya Jacobs. Tables of content. It has 6 chapters and 23 pages. The Right Thing. Lukanya Bright Jacobs is one of the most brilliant Xhosa writers in his lifetime. He is very known for his first book, The Right Thing, which is one of the most splendid form of literature. Jacobs, as he prefers being called by his second or surname, is a passionate writer who aims on entertaining his readers with his literature. He was inspired by all the books in his portable device, which he says is a list of collections, and his personal bookshelves. South Africa is one of the most populated countries with lots of popular writers and readers. All you need are the right qualifications and a computer screen. An entrepreneur has to take risks in order to produce a marketable piece of art that will gain public recognition. Prologue. The story starts with a dream I had one cold night ago after reading a horror novel with a horror title, Horror Stories to Tell in the Dark. The night was long and cold, so pitch black that the only thing you could see was nothing but the piercing shine of the outside light in the pitch most darkest of rooms. In the midst of finding it hard to sleep, the only solution was to try breathing and rhythmic techniques to try and make something happen. Well, it was not one of those lazy days followed by lazy nights. It was a very productive day. After a long day of working out, sketching, and drinking coffee, as it made it harder to sleep because coffee, on the other hand, made it suspiciously harder to sleep because of its well-known side effects. But just as I gave up trying, something took over. I was in a dream world, but guess what? It was not an ordinary dream. It was a character-oriented dream. The scary part is that I was part of that dream, and it was as real as waked up world. In fact, parallel or similar. One would state the saying, real life, ordinary life has an obvious starting story. You are born into a world and welcomed into a family in a government and ruled world which has laws and regulations as well as principle. South Africa has a Home Affairs responsible for name certificates and identity cards. I was a person and an important person to a circle of friends. In layman's terms, friendship. All of us were Catholic and seem as if we went to a boarding school, a very Catholic-based boarding school. This book is one of my first and favorite book. It is very insightful and clever. The Right Thing is action-oriented, based on acts, both lawfully acceptable acts and lawfully unacceptable acts, which may be deemed as criminalistic acts of crime. There are many stories of people ending up behind bars, prison cells, because of socially unacceptable acts which were deemed as criminalistic. Chapter 1. I was in a world with no sense of time, no identity card relevance, or any background information which would resemble my wake-up life's daily concerns. Intoxicated people would refer to this as an escape, but it was not. Brief example of the word escape is to be free from constraints or enforced normalities of day-to-day life. But escape is not needed when cooperation is the closest thing to mental sanity. I was in a boarding school according to this dream I was having, and I had a group of friends, all very meaningful to me somehow. Sometimes we were all chased by the boarding school's principal or security guard after trying to break the rules and go out of the safety of our boarding school sleeping rooms, which were in organized section as I remember. One night we managed to escape and the school's strict security system and take long walks looking for females to have sex with, because their school was very strictly all male students oriented, and technically we never did actually find any women or female teenagers. Even drugs seemed to be very attractive and desirable because of the harsh conditions. Very youthful it seemed, a fresh thinker, as like in the mind of a teenager male. Though a fresh thinker, it seemed a fresh thinker who did not consider the last generation's views of perfection on what the current generation should behave like and be. Because each elder considers a private school as quality education for children looking to get brighter futures, as a private or boarding school is considered a very advanced form of education But coming back to the point, the rude and dangerous outings we took consisted of me and the guys. We somehow always managed to come back and be in the comfort and safety of our boarding school rooms. I remember in the dream the harsh words which were always said by the security officer. Whenever there were sneaking sounds without any presences, he would say, "You will never find a job in the future." What harsh words said in very harsh conditions were to scare a ghost, but I think he knew what he meant, because all the bad boys with horrible reputations in the school always were part of the population which lived with their parents, statistically counting with proof of analytics and numbers. Chapter 2. Yes, boarding school was very scary, and if your mind was not right and focused, you would end up regretting your choices of consideration and selection. Yet I find it hard to do without any realism. Of course, it was real, but I discovered that when I woke up in my pillow crying because of the ending, which I will get to in this book. But with patience, most assuredly, that is waiting for readability and discovery. The security would always say his harsh words, "You will never find a job in the future." Maybe because he knew what he was doing, because always he'd say that to sneakings and not presences. Or I would think to myself, he did that because of all the years of experience with routine and constant tuition fees parents pay to enroll their children to make sure they get a place in the school. Those constant mental health stability exercises to at least get a sense of an escape during the day. At least if time measurement was like that in the dream land, which had a very good grip on productivity and not common waked up world type of senses. There were times of church gatherings, as I would put it, among the teachers of the boarding school, which would have strictly all students gathering also as a requirement, and all of the students had to be in full uniforms, which consisted of church formal wear, as I remember it. Not to abuse the ability of the mind in grasping and remembering information, but this was the closest memories I could collect at the moment of tears as I woke up. The gathering had a funny way of working, because in our alone time we were all outlaws, but we had a very funny way of being good in the eyes of the authoritarian figures in their presence, of course. There was this old man teacher. I don't remember his name, but I think he was one of the school owners. He was very harsh in nature, very well known among the students as very abusive. He slapped, punched, and punished, but was very popular for his belt, shiny polished brown leather belt, that he would use to whip other students behind their backs, as sort of like resembling the capital punishment of Yeshua Jesus of Nazareth, because he was whipped severely behind his back with a whip, and it being a private school, a very holy and Catholic boarding school. I'm sure the school used one of the punishments of Yeshua Jesus of Nazareth on its students. Well, not just the infamous leather brown belt, but also the slappings were a bit dangerous. As a person who questions authority, the punishment had a strange way of irritating a person, combined with the slight schizophrenic voices enhancing the anger drive which fuels the desire for freedom from abuse by the ones who hide their actions from the biological parents of the students. Yes, the place was riddled with suspicion, but we were also suspiciously breaking the rules anyway, so suspicion was breeding suspicion. As a person who is always trying to do the right thing, I'm sure as a grown man you would relate to the idea of calling a child's parents to address them by a form of meeting before taking matters into your own hands and resorting to extreme punishment of historical aligning torture. But the school owners resembled a typically old abusive man who would abuse you until you yourself turn into an abuser. Yes, it was that contagiously problematic. Sometimes you would feel heroic moments of rebellion, rebellious moments of wanting to punch his face, the old school teacher, and owner in front of the whole school assembly, but always one would coil back into his protective shell like a sort of snail or turtle. He had a way of changing the atmosphere environment to a rebellion-free holy world, yet I wondered, what is in the outside world if you can't even have a say in how you have been treated? Chapter 3. The waiting and waiting for dear freedom seemed like an eternal mental prison without any possibility of escape, though escape does not seem possible. This reminded me of the time I spent in a psychiatric hospital ward, all the slow hours, minutes and seconds spent on waiting for your freedom, but without any signs of being discharged. While the dream private school was the exact same example, yet people say educational dreams for parents looking to enroll their children are a good sign. But to me, it felt like season 8 of the American Horror Story. One of the episodes of how hell would be structured, one person's worst nightmares in their own daily lives. But the worst thing is trapped in a realm where you experience the worst day of or nightmare on repeat for all eternity in a single night or day without any changes. Example is killing, and in hell you would on repeat the same action as a loop torment by the supreme god of the underworld. But anyway, that was and is that. But coming back at how I was explaining the old owner of the school in just one word, I would call him Old Man Grumpy, OMG. The Old Man Grumpy had a way of changing the environment into a very fear-based environment, but at least what the Old Man Grumpy was not was a reputationally nice person. In fact, he was never known for smiling. He reminded me of a heartfelt story I once wrote about a dinner party in Olympus, European style. The king of the gods, Zeus, is invited to a dinner party by all the other gods. He is excited to see everyone on the table. But the issue starts when they serve a fully roasted chicken, pig and a cattle, while Zeus, having the background story of almost being erased by his father Cronus, husband of Rhea, because of destiny. Zeus is repulsed by the dinner party and the skies turn absolutely black and the thunder communicates an angry message as if the thunder could see as a member of the dinner table. And everyone was looking at Zeus because he was the only one to blame, because he is and was the god of thunder. So the lesson of the story is, anger will show itself as signs depending on which constellation month you fall under. So what the Old Man Grumpy was doing was metaphorically bottling everyone's anger until it showed as signs, and then he would shift the atmospheric pressure to a rebellion-free environment. He would slap the students, abuse them. I know it sounds like behind closed doors as I put it in these scenarios, but to the school it was just a known disciplinary action. Each and every school has its own way of disciplining, like the sheep and the shepherd story. Chapter 4. How the media tells us that being angry is not healthy. One should never bottle up anger internally. A release is needed to kind of like let go of all the tension in your body. But since it was a school environment, I don't remember ever, even in my waked up life, having to work out in a school environment where even missing one lesson would have dangerous outcomes or shortcomings. So making a person used to seeing others get slapped and abused takes a toll out of you. I was angry and I needed to do something. I needed to do the right thing. In the past and current, I watch a lot of superhero movies. Now, according to the years of watching, now would be a perfect time to strike the enemy according to my thought space. This reminded me of the time I almost attacked my mother because she was using her disciplinary action towards me while I was sketching a Nelson Mandela picture. The picture had its complexities, but I managed to draw a nice picture, and my mother, through her own view of things, she was upset and about something, and she started yelling. In my mind, I was going to attack her by means of confrontation, but with the help of from the boxing session, sort of like helping me with my body's emphasis on the matter. Because of that, she thought I was going to beat her, so she called the police and I ended up in a psychiatric hospital ward. I spent 8 days being treated for schizophrenia in my waked up life, but I guess if I just stayed in my room and continued sketching, none of it would have taken place. So to the old man Grumpy, you had to be careful. One action could lead to you to a place you don't want to be, like jail and again psych ward for violation of another's rights. So the students did not have any place of equal say. Chapter 5. I noticed after trying to do the right thing, I just decided maybe it was just anger. So I decided to coil back into my invisible protective shell. I don't want to rebel against oppression, only to look like the crazy student. I did what I did best, which is coiling back to my protective shell, and heroic moments were becoming very irritating because of the short history of failing to show how one feels. They just keep quiet, but doing the right thing and fighting back would at least lead to a reforming of the school's way of doing things. Like at least one learner or student simply punches back would be a sacrifice to the greater good, which would lead to the system being less autocratic and more democratic and listen to its students' concerns as well. As well as addressing their concerns. That is really needed. A more democratically political perspective than an abusive atmosphere. A working together type of environment. But would a punch to the face of authority lead to that possibility? I mean, as an individual, it was just clear to me that these thoughts have had occupants, and I was not the first one to occupy them. Chapter 6. Another church gathering was at hand between the school, and all students were required to come and participate, although the school used an autocratic leadership and not a democratic system. It was very cruel and forced, so it was one of those. You had to be there whether sick, moody, lazy, or in need of silence, or a quiet time. This time, the behavior among the students was pretty unacceptable because some of the students did not show up to the gathering. Ones that did not show up included us, a circle of friends consisting of me and the guys. We were never caught by recognizing eye, but by present registration list. We were not present to sign for our names to kind of show that we were there. We were outside of the school because we chose the wrong night to sneak out, and the old man Grumpy did not seem to like the fact that we missed the gathering at all. Not the fact that we were outside of the safety and protection of the school's strict security system, but the fact that we missed the church gathering at all. We were all, as a group, in the principal's office, waiting to hear from him on what is going to happen because of the actions that we took that led to be not on the register of the gathering because they did a name check. So the old man Grumpy was angry and his face was showing a facially disappointed expression. Then suddenly he took off his jacket, followed by his infamous leather brown belt, and in an instant whipped one of my dearest friend on his face, and time froze into a still picture. I was shaken out of focus. Then suddenly he whipped him on the back after he turned to protect his face. Then it was like something took over, like in the beginning of the story. In the midst of finding it hard to sleep, something took over. I choked the old man Grumpy with my left hand's tight grip on his neck, and he fell on the ground face first and died after I just touched him. At least that was the formulating story. Then after that I was in tears and woke up on my bed thinking to myself, what kind of cruelty would lead to an innocent man into being a murderer in a split second with no real evidence that would favor his side. I woke up feeling happy. It was a dream that I think was just a dream. After escaping a murder conviction of a dream, I went on the internet and it told me that it is called a lucid dream, that it was normal and healthy. The end.